प्रसार भारती अभिलेखागार की प्रस्तुति सदाबहार सुनहरे दौर का अनमोल खजाना।
We are now in front of Indian cinema's most historic landmarks. Today, it is a complex of offices and other business houses. But 100 years ago, this used to be the Watson's Hotel. And this is where, on July 7th, 1896, the Lumiere brothers, just 6 months after their first screening in Paris, came down to screen their package of silent films. The audience was a very elite group, and they paid a hefty 1 rupee for every seat. Obviously, it was a big hit. For a few months later, a lot more cinema operators came from all over the world to show their films to audiences in India. And many of them even shot actuality sequences in Bombay and Calcutta. For they realized that nothing warms the audiences better than watching their own space and their own people. Seeing this response, a photographic equipment dealer in Bombay decided to buy his own movie equipment and film India and her people. In 1899, Harishchandra Bhatwadekar remains the first documentary filmmaker in India. He even filmed a reception accorded to R.P. Paranjape, a mathematics honor student from the University of Cambridge. The first Indian newsreel is now lost, probably forever. But Bhatwadekar, or Sabe Dada as we affectionately know him, is certainly the first Indian filmmaker who proved that we as Indians can also make our own films. Several years later, in 1912, the first attempt at producing the first Indian story film was made. The film was called Bhakta Pundalik, and it was jointly produced by Torne, Chitre and Tipnis. But since the effort was a bit sketchy and the acting a bit crude, the credit for the first Indian narrative film had to wait another year. It came under the hands of Dhundiraj Govind Phalke. After working for 3 hard years, he produced India's first film called Raja Harishchandra.
Dadasaheb Phalke was virtually a one-man show, and watching this extremely brilliant footage, one can certainly feel that Phalke realized that he was the pioneer in India and therefore felt responsible for ushering in good standards.
Dadasaheb Phalke, as we affectionately know him, was an extraordinarily talented man. He was an arts graduate from Bombay, proficient in drawing, painting, architecture. He was a good stage actor and an amateur magician too. He set up his own printing and engraving works to do the oleographs of the great painter Raja Ravi Verma. And one day, he saw a film based on the life of Jesus Christ.
Although this is not the film that he saw, but what one can understand here is Phalke realized cinema's ability to touch a spiritual dimension.
This film on Jesus Christ was going to change the course of Dadasaheb Phalke and Indian cinema. For while he was watching the life of Jesus Christ unfold on the screen, he was mentally visualizing the pantheon of Indian gods, the legends associated with Lord Rama, Krishna, Gokula, Ayodhya. And then he thought, can we not, the sons of India, ever be able to achieve such images on the Indian screen?
It is indeed uncanny that Phalke chose the story of Raja Harishchandra for his first film. Could it be that the great financial stress, combined with the responsibility of a pioneer's career that he was under while making this film, prompted the subject of the famous Raja Harishchandra, which was in turn the story of an honest, self-sacrificing king? Did Phalke see a sort of spiritual identity with the noble story of Raja Harishchandra? Phalke shot this film in Bombay, near his house, while members of his family doubled up to be his crew members. This film was made with an all-male cast, some of them doing the female roles too. This film was finally an enormous success, for every member of the audience identified with the noble, honest qualities of Harishchandra, qualities which they all aspired for and hoped that the leaders of their society at that time also practiced.
Undoubtedly, Raja Harishchandra represented something more than a mere story film to the viewers. It was an extension of age-old narrative traditions, a confirmation in the values of honesty and self-sacrifice. And also, it represented a spirit of nationalism, an avowed preference for Swadeshi over imported foreign commodities.
The subjects of these dramas and dance ideas and items were all pertaining to mythology, because we used to take inspiration from the mythological stories and the great epics. The two epics, Mahabharata and the Ramayana, I think they are eternal sources of energy, spiritual energy, as well as entertainment too.
The Indian film industry was finally born in the throes of the independence movement. The success of Raja Harishchandra inspired Dadasaheb Phalke to set up the Hindustan Cinema Film Company in Nasik. Besides making several other narrative films, Dadasaheb Phalke was also involved in the making of documentaries and motivational films in the true spirit of nationalism. Dadasaheb Phalke was a consummate craftsman. He even designed his own camera and made his own set of glass filters to get the right tones and textures. Some of his early silent films, like Sairendri and Simagad, are now lost like most silent films of India, and most of them due to poor storage conditions. In the wake of his achievements, several studios came up all over India, the most prominent one of them being the Maharashtra Film Company in Kolhapur, under the supervision of Baburao Painter.
Painter was a visionary, and in sharp contrast to Phalke's mythologies, he made a very realistic film called Saukari Pash. He was also instrumental in inspiring Fathelal and Damle to set up the famous Prabhat Studios in Pune, where we are now. A different kind of scenario unfolds across the Indian subcontinent in Calcutta. Jamshedji Madan, a very wealthy businessman and a theatre owner, inspired by the success of Raja Harishchandra, decided to make another film on the same story and on the same lines. This film was called Satyavati, Raja Harishchandra. Made in 1917, it was directed by D. Rustamji. Curiously, Jamshedji Madan soon switched over to making films based on the Parsi theatre stories and had them directed by European directors like Camille Legrand. With his eyes on the international market, Jamshedji Madan called Eugenio de Liguoro from Italy to make an Indian mythological called Nala Damayanti, replete with a European star cast. His Calcutta rivals were aghast and accused him of selling out to the Western markets. The most celebrated Bengali filmmakers to emerge were Dhiren Ganguly, an artist from Shantiniketan, Himanshu Rai, an aristocratic lawyer, Debaki Bose, an ardent nationalist, and Pramotesh Barua, an active legislator from Assam. Dhiren Ganguly's most celebrated film was Bilet Perat. meaning foreign returned. This film was a satire on the Indian high society, which mimicked European lifestyles and mannerisms. He continued this kind of lampooning with two other films, one called The Marriage Tonic and another film called Take Kina Hai. The fact that the Bengali filmmakers were lovers of realism and enamored by their city of Calcutta is reflected in this silent film called Jamai Babu, directed by Kalipada Das. Jamai Babu is quite obviously a film modeled in the slapstick formula and heavily inspired by Charlie Chaplin. And Kalipada Das manages to put in his own Bengali touch to this caricature of a country bumpkin who strolls into a metropolis. Kalipada Das certainly had an excellent sense of timing and rhythm, but unlike his Hollywood counterparts like the Keystone Studios, Kalipada Das could not set up traffic and crowd scenes. So with sheer ingenuity, he managed to use real traffic, real trams, real crowds and create his delightful escapades in the streets of Calcutta.
Himanshu Rai, on the other hand, who was trained as a lawyer in London, used all his contacts there to give Indian cinema an international standing. He made his first film based on Edward Arnold's poem called Light of Asia, which depicted the life of Buddha.
In sharp contrast to Jamai Babu, the style and presentation of Light of Asia resembles any of the brilliant early European films. Well composed and designed with a lot of attention to details, the performance by Himanshu Rai in the leading role breathes a lot of conviction and confidence. The equipment and crew for this film came from Germany, and all the prints of this film were made in Munich. Himanshu Rai had only to raise the production cost of rupees 90,000 all by himself. The film looks at the mental turmoil of the wealthy prince who questions the role of pain, separation, and death, which seems to be taken for granted as part of one's life. Why should one feel sad and depressed when death and end is inevitable? Why is the individual so attached to one's family, one's riches, one's property, when he was never even born with it? To do the sensitive portrayal of Gopa, Himanshu Rai engaged the charming 13-year-old Rennie Smith, whose screen name was later changed to Sita Devi. Is there something else to life? And the prince realizes it and becomes the Buddha when he adopts the path of non-violence as the right path, as dharma. During the making of Prapancha Pash, also known as the Throw of Dice, he met Devika Rani, who was incidentally working on this film as the costume designer after having graduated from the Academy of Dramatic Arts in London. It certainly takes a lot of guts for an actor who had won acclaim playing the role of Buddha to take on a negative character in this film. For the throw of dice, Himanshu Rai managed to get finance from a consortium of European financiers, including the prestigious UFA Studios in Germany. As his films were very popular in Europe, Himanshu Rai concentrated on exotic elements. Though loosely constructed around the gambling incident in Mahabharata, fire eaters, dance girls, camels, and giant palaces became the perfect ingredients to create the Oriental fantasy. And it is in Shiraz that his screenwriter Niranjan Pal and director Franz Osten achieve near perfection. Based on the story of Shah Jahan and Shiraz, the architect of Taj Mahal, the film explores Shah Jahan's possessive nature, who wanted his architect trampled upon so that a feat like the Taj could never be repeated. But fate would have it otherwise. Shah Jahan changes his mind. Cinema arrived in Madras through a completely different person. By profession, he was an automobile spare parts dealer. But at heart, he was a cameraman. His name was Nataraja Mudaliar, and he left for Pune to train under the ace cameraman called Stuart Smith. He came back to set up the Indian Film Company and made the first Tamil mythological called Kichaka Vadam.
You know, in those days, people never thought of making any social films or other type of film, detective films or anything like that, action films and all that. Because the people were enjoying only stage plays. Stage plays in Tamil Nadu meant only mythological dramas. So perhaps Nataraja Mudaliar also thought only mythology will appeal to people. And he chose this subject, Kichakavadam, wherein the Bhima kills Kichakan in Vrada country. And that film became a very big hit.
However, the earliest surviving print of any South Indian film today is this Malayalam production of Marthanda Varma, directed by P.N. Rao. It tells the story of the Kerala prince Marthanda Varma, who is being hounded by the clan members of the Ettuvittu Pillai. How he overcomes them and establishes his kingdom forms the climax. But what is interesting to note here is the birth of the formula cinema. Chases, folk dances, miniature sets with fire in it, a little bit of violence as the fight scene here, and even an obligatory rape. Finally, we are even presented with a song sequence in a silent film. The mainstream cinema formula seems to have been defined precisely by Marthanda Varma.
All said and done, it was left to the city of Bombay to develop what one could call a pan-Indian mainstream cinema. It was here that D.N. Sampath and Maneklal Patel set up the Kohinoor Film Studios in 1918. They organized their studios on thoroughly professional lines, just like the way the big studios operated in Hollywood. Producing both documentaries and features, their nationalist commitment was so intense that their very first film, called Bhakta Vidur, in 1921 was banned by the British. Relentless, they continued to make many more films, which included films like Gul-e-Bakawali and Kalanag in 1924. They were directed by a person called Kanji Bai Rathod, whom we can officially call the first professional director in India.
The formula cinema is taken to its dizzy heights by the Hindi cinema in Bombay. Reaching out to a larger market, they could invest more money. This can be noticed by its 4-language intertitles. Few will notice that this young, beautiful heroine here is none other than Lalita Pawar, the famous character actress of later Hindi cinema.
The Kohinoor Film Studios set up their own distribution agency to market their films all over the country for a regular revenue every month. The story of their success spread far and wide, and artists and technicians from all over the country poured in to show their mettle. Very soon, the Kohinoor Film Studios introduced big artists like Raja Sando, Gohar, Sulochana, and big directors like Chaudhary. The rise of the Kohinoor Film Studios inspired many other entrepreneurs to set up their own studios. Names like Imperial, Krishna, and Sharada were to make Bombay the true mecca of the Indian film trade. The Hollywood cinema was finally getting a very strong competitor in India. But more about Hollywood and Indian cinema in the next episode. So long, goodbye.